tuned into Recovery TV, the voice of hope, with your host, John J. Tassoni Jr. Discussions and information on addiction and mental health issues. Now, here's John and today's guest.
Welcome to Recovery TV, and I'm your host, John Tassoni. Narcan, please get it. You can get it down at URI. You can get it multiple different places. Put it in your purse, keep it in your car. It's a lifesaver. We need to get the overdoses down. So thank you for that. My guest today is Mr. Brian Mello. Mr. Mello wrote a book. And we're going to talk about the book that Mr. Mello wrote because I think it's a very interesting book. So Mr. Mello, welcome.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. And I'm going to call you Brian,
yes,
if you don't mind.
Sure.
So tell me about your book. Why you wrote it, how you wrote it.
Well, I wrote it because I've always wanted to write a book. I went to school for journalism, so I've always had different interests in various subjects. But I thought, what can I write a book about? And I thought, since I work as a substance abuse counselor and I've been clean for over 30 years myself,
wow,
I decided I thought that I could, there would be people benefiting from a book if I wrote it, because I talk about my life's journey in there. I talk about my interpretation of the 12 steps of recovery, a lot of the methods that I teach my clients at where I work, breathing techniques and alternative methods just outside the box a little bit.
A lot of people don't realize is there multiple methods on trying to stay focused.
Right. Yeah, I think that's very important because I believe in the body-mind-spirit connection, You put down the drugs and the alcohol, and so many clients, they relapse due to complacency or boredom. And I tell them, you have to change, you've got to get out of your comfort zone, and that's what's worked for me.
Now, do you also believe, Brian, because a lot of people that come on the show and they talk about not having enough time in a facility like a residential care facility, only having 14 days, and maybe they get a few more days there. Now, do you believe as a counselor that the insurance company should give you more days into residential treatment?
Well, I think, whatever is sufficient, because a lot of times, especially now, substance abuse is really on the rise.
Yeah.
And trying to get them placed into halfway houses or sober houses has been more challenging. And a lot of times we have to keep contacting the insurance companies trying to get extensions, and it can be challenging at times. So it would be more beneficial if they could up it to like 21 days minimum.
When I got involved in the General Assembly, it was 90 days.
Okay.
And then it went to 60 days, and then it went to 30 days, and now down to 14 days.
Yeah.
And the amount of people that we have using today is way above what we had using years ago. And I think COVID made it worse.
Oh, definitely. COVID, I think, contributed to a lot of mental health issues, as well as a lot of relapses, a lot of addiction.
And now, you said you've been in recovery for 30 years. How long have you been a counselor?
I've been working as a counselor for 5 years.
5 years. Went back to school, got your license.
Yeah, basically I majored in journalism years ago, and I was involved in the recovery process for many years. And when COVID came around, I had lost my day job. I had a job. I was working in a glass shop, But I've always wanted to get involved in, as a counselor and all that. So when I got hired, they especially liked the fact that I incorporate like meditation and teaching the clients yoga. These are things they're not accustomed to. They've never been exposed to it. And I see that they really enjoy it, and it enhances their recovery because a lot of them want to continue it.
So tell me about yoga, and then we'll go into the next one. But how do you teach somebody in recovery to use yoga to make sure that they use it in the right way?
Well, I teach a very basic form of yoga where I work. I call it like chair yoga. We do some of the stuff in the chair and some of the stuff in front of the chair. And we do a lot of breathing techniques because you can actually calm the central nervous system and change your physiology through a lot of these breathing techniques. And that's what really got me into myself personally into yoga. I was introduced to yoga through the P90X workout. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yep.
And I did not like it, but I kept at it.
A lot of people don't like it in the beginning.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I stuck it out because I believe when you commit yourself to something, you should stick with it, you
Right,
know,
right.
even if it's not comfortable, because when you grow out of your comfort zone, you know. So I started doing it, and the third time I did it, I felt that body, mind, spirit connection, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. So I started going to workshops and buying books and videos, and lo and behold, I teach now.
Now, what about meditation?
The meditation, I also got certified in that because I think that's essential in recovery. Where I work at Star in Fall River, we have meditation every morning for the client. It's like a 20-minute meditation. Because I'm certified, I use a lot of instruments. I play guitar, flute, I have singing bowls, shamanic drum. So I studied sound therapy, which is a big element of the meditation, and it helps the clients get more focus into the present moment. Because as you know, they're suffering from anxiety, PTSD and all that. So I find things like meditation and breath work really beneficial to them. And I'm always giving them handouts on some of those breathing techniques.
So you're in Star in Fall River,
Yes.
right? What is it like in Fall River with the epidemic? Is it
Oh, it's bad there.
progressively getting worse? Or?
It seems to be, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of our clients are from the Fall River area,
Okay.
and a lot of them, continually come in and out, because it's really, really difficult out there,
What ages Fall River? Is it all ages?
all ages, I would say.
Yeah, we're starting to see a trend where we have a lot of older folks.
Yeah, there is more older lately than there has been in the past.
And I think that has to do with the DEA and what they're doing with prescription drugs.
Oh, definitely.
Meaning that when you go into the hospital, you have surgery, you're only allowed X amount of pills. And then if you're still in pain, the doctors are not going to write any more scripts.
Right.
So those folks are going
To the streets.
to the streets.
And a lot, yeah.
And sometimes they're surviving, and sometimes they're not.
No, I know, because it's a big problem. Fentanyl is on the rise. It's in everything now. There's, the street drugs they have out there, like painkillers, fentanyl,
Right.
Even like cocaine, marijuana, that's laced with fentanyl now.
Right.
They're overdosing on smoking marijuana,
Right.
which was unheard of years ago.
So if you're okay with this, let me
Yes.
ask you the question about, you've been in recovery for 30 years. What was your drug of choice?
Oh, I was into everything. I was a musician.
Oh, okay.
But what happened was a lot of things led up to it, like PTSD is associated with it, depression. When I was 12 years old, it's in the book, I was badly burned in a fire, so I was in the hospital for 3 months. And I had to have numerous plastic surgeries on my right torso. And that really my self-esteem was low because I was a teenager and
Right.
I was into sports and I couldn't,
Right.
excel at sports anymore.
But I want to, we got to take a break, Brian. So
Sure.
I want to talk about that when we come
Okay.
back. So you're watching Recovery TV, and I'm your host, John Tassoni. Brian Mello. We'll be here right back after these messages.
Now, back to Recovery TV with your host, John J. Tassoni Jr. Recovery TV is made possible by our supporting sponsors and our title sponsor, AdCare. Now, here's John and today's guest.
Welcome back to Recovery TV, and I'm your host, John Tassoni. Brian Mello's in the house, and Brian wrote this great book that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. And he is a counselor down at Star in Fall River. So, Brian, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for what you do. You've been in recovery for 30-plus years, and I give you a lot of credit.
Thank you.
So tell us about, so we can continue about the drug of choice and how you got
Okay,
to where
so
you are.
what happened was, as I explained, I was burned and I went through the, the trials and tribulation of a teenager with scars. But when I got to about 21 years old, my father was diagnosed with cancer. And I was trying to get my act together at that point because I was like experimenting with LSD, some cocaine, a lot of barbiturates, amphetamines, being a musician, you know, and of course alcohol. And my father ended up passing away while I was I went back to school for journalism, and he passed away while I was in college. And not long after that, in my second year, because I was going for an associate's degree, my mother committed suicide. Oh. And that, you know, I felt really guilty about it because she had talked about, you know, missing my father. She didn't want to live, and I had 2 younger brothers. I felt responsible, so then I just had a death wish after that. I felt like I was responsible. I should have noticed that, and that's when my addiction just really went off.
And then how did the light go on? How did you get sober?
Oh, it was like a few years. I got involved in a relationship. I got married. My wife and I were musicians, and as marriage was progressing, you know, we never performed sober. We were always under the influence of something, and it just progressively got worse. You know, our financial situation, our relationship. You know, the drugs was taking its toll on my health. Yeah. My last year, I wound up in my last year of using, I wound up in the hospital 3 times with pneumonia. And I was like physically, spiritually, mentally broken, and I knew I couldn't do it anymore. Yes, I bottomed out, and I didn't care if I lived or died. And I had to leave her to save myself. I had to cut ties with all my friends. They were all using, and I had to find a new way of life. And it wasn't easy, but you know, you have to people, places, and things. You have to get away from that.
Right, right. So the book.
The book.
Tell me about the book.
All right, so basically the book, the contents in it is a little bit about my life, my personal journey, and then I get into the 12 steps, my perspective. I figured a lot of people are confused. You know, they see the word God in the 12 steps and they get turned off by that. Right. I know a lot of clients do. So I explained that, you know, it's the God of your understanding, a higher power of your understanding, not necessarily God associated with like the Bible or anything. So I get into my perspective of the 12 steps and how you have to be ready for the 4th step. Because when I did my 4th step the first time, I got into such a dark place because I wasn't really ready for it. I didn't surrender like I should have. Yeah. And I became suicidal in my recovery. And that's in the book, how I was actually going to commit suicide. And I don't know, divine intervention, whatever it was, I picked up the phone, I called my sponsor, we talked for an hour. He had the same counselor I did. He suggested I call her. She's more, you know, professionally equipped. So I called her. She set up an emergency meeting, and then I went to a dual diagnosis place. I didn't relapse. It was my 2nd year in recovery, but I had like I guess a mental relapse, and that was a turning point in my life.
What do you hope the readers get out of reading your book?
Well, I hope that they see that, you know, some of the things that you have to practice to maintain your recovery. Number 1 is gratitude. When I introduce myself, I always say I'm a grateful recovering addict. You know, gratitude is so important because we take so much for, you know, granted, and we live in a society where they're always trying to sell you products to feel better, and you can actually feel better from inside. Right. So, you know, I talk about gratitude in there. I want them to realize that change is very important, getting out of your comfort zone, trying different things, because that's what enhanced my recovery. You know, some of the things I've done in my recovery, this addict actually joined the fire department for a year and got EMT certified. I wanted to try it. It didn't resonate with me, but I did it, you know? Yeah. And then I got into martial arts, teaching yoga. I worked as a flamenco guitarist for like over 10 years with El Arte Flamenco. All these things enhanced my life, enhanced my recovery, because I didn't have time to be bored. I didn't have time to like get complacent, you know? You want to constantly challenge yourself.
Yeah, you want to keep going, because once you stop, then it could be a road, you know, that you don't want to go down.
Exactly.
So what makes your book, what makes this book different than the 500 books that people wrote?
Well, my book, I have a lot of the methods that I teach my clients, and it's been proven successful by the feedback I get from them, you know. I teach a lot of like breathing techniques in the book. I talk about, you know, nutrition, a little bit about that. Some of the books don't get into that, but what you put into your body has an impact
Right.
on the mental health as
Right.
well, you know. So if you're eating junk all the time,
Right.
you know, you're not going to be in a very good place mentally.
Right.
So I talk a little bit about nutrition. I also talk about, you know, like I said, getting out of your comfort zone. Some of the things I teach my clients, like stress management techniques, coping skills, you know, and I find that some of the recovery books out there don't have those methods, and that's why I try to put as much as I can in there that will enhance anybody in recovery as well as anybody else that may want to improve their life period, you know.
You know, you make a good point about coping skills, because there's a lot of people that they don't know how to
Exactly.
cope with certain situations, whether it's a stressful situation, whether it's a family situation, whether it's a work situation, and that could be a huge trigger for someone to fall off and
Exactly.
start again, you know.
Yeah, because as addicts and alcoholics, the only coping skills we had were drugs and alcohol, you know.
Right.
And you know the end result of that, you know, it just
It's
doesn't
not,
work.
It's not good.
Right.
Now, when you talk to your clients, obviously you're someone that they look up to because you've been through it. You've been through it. Family has been through it. A lot of times, folks that are in residential treatment have already burnt their bridges
Right.
and burnt them badly. And no pun intended from
No, I know.
your accent.
No, I know.
But, I want to talk about that when we come back, because it's a big deal
Oh,
to
definitely.
get your family to embrace you again. You're watching Recovery TV, and I'm your host, Sean Tassoni. We'll be right back after these messages.
Now, back to Recovery TV with your host, John J. Tassoni Jr. Recovery TV is made possible by our supporting sponsors and our title sponsor, AdCare. Now, here's John and today's guest.
Welcome back to Recovery TV, and I'm your host, Sean Tassoni. Brian Mello's in the house. We're going to talk about his book. We're going to talk about where you can get his book, and talk about everything that's in the book. So, Brian, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, your book,
Yes.
where can we get it?
It's available online on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and numerous websites. The publishing company I'm dealing with, they have all kinds of different sites out there if you Google it. But like Amazon's probably the easiest place to get it, and
Yeah.
the Barnes & Noble, you know, website.
Yeah, it looks like it's a great book. I can't wait to read it.
Oh, thank you.
But and I want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank you for the work that you do,
you're
because
welcome.
we need to have more people like yourself help these younger folks that are in trouble, to get them on a path of recovery and stay on recovery and become productive citizens again. There's way too many deaths,
Oh,
whether it's in
definitely.
Massachusetts or Rhode Island, way too many overdose deaths. The drug of choice now is everything they can get their hands on, and it's not a good place. It's not a good place. Now we're seeing more stuff coming in from the West Coast, like we did back in the 70s,
Right.
and it's not a good place. But thank you for what you do.
Thank you for
Thank you
having
for
me.
writing this book,
Thank you.
because every book that's written about recovery is a good book, in my mind. It's a good
Right,
book.
yeah, it's a-
Because somebody may take something out of this book rather than this book over here, and become productive citizens again. So again, thank you. Next week, folks, Neighborhood Health is on Dr. Chris Aniano. We'll talk about what Neighborhood is doing to combat the overdose crisis. So we'll see you all next week, and have a safe and healthy week. See you next week.